So I learned to paint when I was about 13. I was in a small private school here in Polk County, and I was learning how to do my first painting, and I hated it. I couldn't figure out what I was doing. I thought it was so complicated. I just didn't understand. And because we were such a small school, we could kind of pick up and go places. And my instructor took us to a bank to watch the highwayman painter, Robert Butler. And he was demonstrating, and I watched it, and I thought, why am I making such a big, this is easy. Like, I understand this completely, but it was a landscape, it was a floor landscape. I understand what that looks like. And I went back and I did my first painting in 30 minutes and, was winning prizes at the local art competitions and stuff with it. So I grew up in Polk County in Lake Wales, so I was a townsperson more so, but my dad was a big outdoorsman. He loved to go fishing and hunting, and we had a camp set up on one of the local cattle ranches where we could stay on the weekends and have a campfire and then go fishing in the morning and stuff. So I grew up with a appreciation for sort of the local natural environment. And when I started to paint more seriously later on, when I got to trying to paint those sort of subjects, that's when I really went full in, because it was something that I was invested in. I didn't set out to be a history painter. Unfortunately, a lot of the scenes that I painted right around me here of citrus groves and stuff, we lost them within a year or two of making the painting. So I don't really think about it as doing history paintings or recording scenes that are gone or anything like that. I think about it more as making people aware of what is here and our heritage, particularly with the cattle ranching and things like that. That's a big part of conservation, is keeping those working lands. And so it's important for people to understand that that's an important part of our heritage and that it still is here. I started working with conservation organizations, probably 5 or 6 years ago now, and also worked on the funding referendum for Polk County for our environmental lands program. And it's become more and more important just because building really can outpace conservation, and we do need those lands in order to have a healthy living here. That's how we get clean water. That's how we deal with eventually wastewater. All of these things have to be filtered through the natural environment at some point. Everything comes and goes somewhere. And so it's really important to have that element of conservation. And I think a lot of people get confused about the difference between conservation and preservation. And conservation is really like the best use of lands. And so that can include things like working lands, hunting, recreation is included in that. But, and there is preservation in that if you can find land that's still pristine. But all of those uses help pay to keep the land where it's available and open for doing those things, like providing access for wildlife or all kinds of stuff. That's why I still will do a lot of, and I'm not naturally inclined to doing wildlife and hunting paintings, but I will do that every once in a while too, because I think that with such an influx of new people and sort of cultural shifts, hunting's become sort of scary and they don't understand. And I grew up like that. It's very natural to me to let an animal live in the wild their entire life and then go harvest it and you eat it or go fish or whatever. And that is one of the uses that helps keep things in conservation, is people pay for licenses. It helps keep this land open. Polk County is really ahead of the game on the environmental lands. We're lucky that we had the earlier referendum for funding environmental lands purchases, and now the citizens voted for another one, which is great because it's a tax that you know exactly what it's going to. And we know that it worked last time, and everyone's really happy with what we got last time. The whole world loves Circle B. But it's been a great place for me as a resident to be able to take my kids. And it's nice to have these little conservation pockets, because sometimes Tiger Creek's a long way away if you live in Lakeland. We have awesome large stretches of conservation land, but to have those little pocket places where people can touch nature easily, just closer to their own backyard, is fantastic. I love going out to Circle B and photographing alligators and birds and stuff. You're gonna go there and see something. That's not always the case in other places. So I'm really glad that we have that and we're ahead of the game. think everywhere I go, when I'm out in nature or even on farms and places like that, there's so much beautiful stuff. I could really just stay in Polk County and paint things around here if I wanted to, because every day there's something beautiful. There's a different light scenario, the clouds change, like the weather changes. So there's really endless stuff to be interested in. And I think in some ways, landscaping is sort of poo-pooed as like, this is primitive, you're just painting pretty scenes but I'm doing one of the most complex things, which is I begin with an abstract concept and slowly turning it into something that's realistic, which is harder than just making an abstract because I had to be successful on both of those levels in order to create a good painting. But the thing that typically ties it all together is that the light being consistent throughout and having a focal point that's directed by the light. I definitely see the paintings as a way to start conversations about things that are important to me. I don't like being super pushy. I don't think it's helpful. It's better to create something that's beautiful that invites people to learn more than for me to be like, this is what we need to work on. It's more interesting to see like a beautiful painting of a tree or flowers or an animal or people. They talk about in the wildlife corridor, they chose panthers because they were like charismatic large animals. I kind of feel like cowboys are the charismatic large animals of the land. And so I like to do stuff like that too, because they're attractive images that make you want to learn more. It's really special to me when someone, and even if they don't buy the painting, when they see the painting and they say that really touched me, like I got so excited about it, and that's the nicest thing. Like, it's important for me to be able to sell work, but to touch people's hearts is like a whole nother level.